Someone asked me in Charlotte today, if you finish a section of Shulchan Aruch, we've been learning for 2 years a certain section of Shulchan Aruch. If you finish it, can you make a siyum? And there was a discussion in the postgame, if you finish a section of something, can you make a siyum? So the nafkamina would be for the 9 days to have meat. So maybe finishing a parak of Mishlei and doing it for half a year, might be. But I don't know. I'm not passing that whole chamaisa. If you finish the whole Sefer Mishlei, you can make a siyum. Yeah. But in any event, it's still, like someone said, it's still an accomplishment. So we have 5 psukim left. The pasuk that I want to dwell on is pasuk Chafei. But before we speak about that, so I'm just going to speak about a few of the other psukim and leave that one towards the end. So pasuk Yud Beis Chaf Dal, it says Yad Charutzim Timshol Ramia Tilamas. Remember last week we spoke about integrity, honesty, which it's Parak Yud Beis pasuk Chaf Dalet. Chaf Dalet Yud Beis Chaf Dalet. So we spoke about integrity, honesty, and we could have done this pasuk. This is like kind of a siyam of that inyan. So Yad Charutzim Timshol. Charutz usually means somebody who's like very vibrant. Yeah, we're going to see here it's also connected to honesty. Uramia Tiei Lamas. Ramia Tiei Lamas. Somebody who's deceptive is Lamas. What does that mean? So says the Gra, Charutz who Acharif va'oz b'darkei Hashem. You have some people who are they put a lot of energy into serving Hashem. They're very Charif and Oz. They put all their strength into serving Hashem. A lot of things are just not going to work out the way they planned, and it might be difficult in this world. They'll be in the end, they'll be on top. That's what the Gra is saying, right? The people who serve Hashem in this world, they might not get honor, they might not get wealth, they might not get prestige. In this world, they might not be considered to be so much. But in the next world, they'll be on top, says the Gra. The person who is like a smooth talker and is always deceiving people, he might make it to the top, right? Right? He might make it to the top. A chanaf, right? Klomar chanaf shu hefech ha'oz, right? Shu chanaf labrios, right? Elhol be'emes ubetom, right? He's always deceiving people. He's deceiving people. Al pi she'achshu moshel b'chelkas piv yeh lamas, yeh lamas. Okay, he says some Kabbalah down here, 112. But the point here is that, as Chazal tell us, whoever's on the bottom in this world, in the next world they'll be on top, and whoever on the top is on the bottom. What we see in this world is on with the shikra. It's the world of shikra, especially when it comes to honor. The people who really, really deserve honor don't necessarily get in this world. We once went to daven. I have a Talmud who hasn't had children for 20 years. So there's a whole tefillah that you say at the kever of the Chazon Ish. You say the entire Sefer Tillim, and then afterwards you go to the kever. Can I have maybe a cold drink also? Thank you. You go to the kever of Rabbi Yochanan HaSandler. So I thought Yochanan HaSandler is like from the Gemara, one of the Tanaim Amoraim. Rabbi Yochanan HaSandler was a shoemaker in Bnei Brak, and the Chazon Ish held. Thank you. The Chazon Ish held that this person is like, if you daven in his kever, you have Yeshuas. So I'm sure when he was alive, he wasn't necessarily the most famous or well-known person, but that's the way in this world things work. In this world, the person on top, the person who looks like he's on top is not necessarily the person in the next world is going to be on top. I want to just interject with an interesting idea here. It's not so connected, but it just happens to be the same word, so that struck me here. It says li'ei lamas, right? If you look at the first pasuk in Eicha, right? First pasuk in Eicha, we don't have it here in front of you. And there's a slight diversion, but we have to say something about the 9 days, I believe. So the first pasuk in Eicha, whoops, it's not working. It says like this. It says, Eicha yeshav badad, be'ir rabasi am, haisa kamana, rabasi b'goyim srisa minas, haisa lamas. Same type of lashon here, it was lamas. So it always bothered me. What does it mean? Hayis olamas. That's the first thing we say in Eicha. And this year when I was in Chutz La'aretz, so I got a bill from the Iriyah. Yeah, it was a red one. You know the red ones. The red one means if you don't pay it immediately. One year I didn't pay it immediately, and a week later I got a summons to court. I had to pay a lawyer's fee. It was so immediately I sent someone to go pay it. When something is a mas, you take care of it right away. Because that's urgent. Yeah, and Lamaisa, I think that's the pshat here in the pasuk in Eicha, Ha'is Lamas. Really, the avoda of the 9 days, it's supposed to be really urgent. It's supposed to be urgent. When we say that Yerushalayim is like an almana, that it means like the Gemara talks about the most distinguished family in Yerushalayim, in prestige and wealth, in Torah greatness, and the wife was an almana, and she was like crawling on the dung heap, picking out kernels of wheat to eat. It was just such a contrast from greatness to lowness. And really, the avoda of these 9 days really is to recognize the contrast, like what Klal Yisrael is really meant to be and what it really is. Yeah, and that's the word ayeka. We say echa, but the Chazal tell us another way to read it is ayeka means like how can it be? And we're really supposed to be in shock. During these days, we're supposed to look around and just be in shock. I daven every morning at the coastal, and it's beautiful. You have the coastal and people davening in there, but it's missing the Shechina, And it says, in fact, Chazal tell us that when the Zakanim saw the building the second Beis Hamikdash, they cried because the second Beis Hamikdash didn't have Shechina, right? So this is the Mas. The Mas is an urgency; it has to be taken care of, right? And this we're supposed to feel during these days a certain sense of urgency. The problem is like we don't really feel it. I had to speak on Yud Zayin Tammuz in Brooklyn, and I told somebody I'm going to speak about mourning during the 3 weeks. And I was like, wow, that's a really hard topic. Like nobody talks about that today, because we just don't feel it today. We don't feel the urgency. We don't feel that because we don't know what it's really meant to be, right? And the truth is, it's a little bit connected to the pasuk itself, is because it's hidden behind this guise. Just like by the person who's a chanaf, right? You don't see the true colors because he's deceiving you. The world today is incredibly deceptive because everything looks fine, but it's so far away from fine. If we knew like what the world is really supposed to look like, we know like the world is so far away from being fine. I gave a shir last night to a group of families who lost children in suicide victims, And one of them was one of my closest talmidim. He committed suicide right after Purim. And then, I have to tell you, every week since that happened, I've heard about another case, another case, another case, another case. I'm like, why is it happening? So people could say a lot of different things. I'm going to suggest that I'm just going to say something very simple. When the Shechina is in Klal Yisrael, it's a different status quo, right? The whole world is different. And the title of this year is how to eliminate worrying from life. We're going to get to that. That's the next pasuk. But the status quo when the Shechina is in Klal Yisrael is simcha. Rebbe used to say from the Medrash, you are not allowed to have a bank account in Yerushalayim. You ever go to the bank and you put your card in and you get a statement of there's so many zeros in the negative? Baruch Hashem, only 5,000 shekels in the negative. I'm not closing my account yet. You weren't allowed to have an account because maybe you'll be in the negative and you'll be upset. You were not really supposed to be upset in Yerushalayim. It was just simcha t'midus. Because there were kabbanos, because there was kapara every morning, all of the averas of the night were erased with the tamid shel shachar, the morning korban, and every night all the averas the whole day erased. It was a situation where people were living every day was Yom Kippur because all the averas were erased, and it was constant simcha. There was no daiga whatsoever ever about anything. Yeah, there was just constant joy. And we don't have that today. We have problems and things go wrong and we have difficulties and we have Yisurim. And all the Yisurim we have to know that all the Yisurim we have is because the Shekhinah is not here. If the Shekhinah was here, then we would be living in Olam Haba. Yeah, we would literally be living in Olam Haba. Now, the Evan Ezra says whoever's living in Eretz Yisrael is living in Olam Haba. And he says if you buy property in Eretz Yisrael, you bought a chelik in Olam Haba. So Olam Haba. It's much easier to connect to the Shekhinah in Eretz Yisrael, you know. And I daven in a minyan at the coastal every morning. It's such a beautiful minyan. There's a group of women who go downstairs and they daven next to the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And upstairs is a beautiful, beautiful show. We daven there. And I have to tell you, it's the closest place I ever felt on planet Earth to the Shekhinah. Like davening inside, it's an incredible, incredible experience, right? But even that, it's only like a touch. It's a main to main, you know. But when you're davening there, you could feel the Shekhinah, but that's only like a drop, drop, drop. And we have to know that. And that's really the avoda of these days. You know, unfortunately, on the Jewish calendar, the 9 days are like, we try to get it over quickly. You know, my wife was like showing me tonight, like all of the a cappella you could listen to. Yeah. Um, all of the a cappella you could listen to during 9 days because you can't listen to music. And then people try to get food, which is parva, and it tastes exactly like meat. And they try to do this. You know, people are constantly trying to get around the 9 days, unfortunately. But the truth is, we're supposed to feel during these days that we're missing something. You know, we're really supposed to feel during these days that we're missing something. And Rav Dan Segel once spoke. He speaks every week in my call. He once said, like, but how do you do that? How do you tap into the special, special nature of the 9 days? He said you should take something from your life and like eliminate it during the 9 days. You should try to like feel like during these days you should try to feel like you're missing something, right? So I stopped wearing. I don't wear my tie in the 9 days, and each person should try to find something during these days where you feel like you're missing. And people say, Rabbi Charles, why are you wearing a tie? I said, it's 9 days. You know, I can wear a tie. How could you? A tie is like a simchadik thing. You know, everyone should try to find something that you feel like you're missing. It should be like a mas. A mas, like you have to pay the tax. You have to do it. It should feel like an urgency to feel that we really, really need the base of Mikdash back. And the level of simcha that we're going to have, we get it back. And also, like the success in the avoda of the 9 days is according to how much you feel it's missing. You know, if you don't feel like you're missing anything, then Tisha B'Av is just going to be like sitting on the floor, you know, getting your clothes dirty and, you know, saying a lot of old poetry that we don't know what it means, right? But if you really feel like we're really, really missing something, right? But it's such a heavy guise, like he's saying here. It's such an Alma de Shikra. We just don't see it today. Reb Rebbe said, you know, when Reb Rebbe was nifter, 10 years ago, a little less even, and he said that when he was young, they used to go to New Hampshire during for the summer because they had bad allergies. He said people for the 3 weeks they were crying and crying every single day. People were just like crying their eyes out. People actually felt the korban of the Beis Hamikdash. They felt it. They felt like in their heart it was missing something. Okay. Where was that? What's that? Where was that and when was that? It was 70, 80 years ago. Where? Where was it? In New Hampshire. But it was in America. This was like the Jewish, you know, I don't know, in the 50s, you know, 60s. It was the status quo. You know, there was, Reb Rebbe says that he was Zocha to be in the mirror when they came from Shanghai. He said, like, during a service made tshuva, like, people were crying their eyes out. It was a different connection to Kadosh Baruch Hu. And if you know what we're missing, then we would really cry. But unfortunately, we don't feel that we're missing. So that's really the avoda of these days. We said in this pasuk, it's deceptive, it's hidden to try to remove that cloak. Okay, you know, I think we're going to go in order here. I'm going to read the next pasuk because that's the one I really want to focus on. It's a very famous pasuk, and it says like this: we're in Yud Beis Chaf Hey, right? 12:25, easy number to remember. Daiga belev ish yisachenu, right? A person who has worry in their heart, yisachenu. We'll see, what does yisachenu mean, right? V'dvar toiv yisamchenu. But a good thing is misameach a person. Yeah? So, what's the pashup shot in the pasuk? The Gemara says like this: Daiga belev ish yisamchenu. Kasher adam b'daiga. When a person really feels daiga, zu daiga mashpel zaleim od. It takes the heart really down. We know that the main avoda of a Jew is in his heart. Tefillah is avoda shebalev, and Chesed is in the heart, and even Torah is in the heart. And when a person has daiga, it's very hard because you're just like very focused on your daiga. And that's, in fact, I once spoke to Rav Yochanan Zweig from Miami, and I asked him. It says the Torah was only given to Ochlei Man, people eat man. So one explanation is you have to say Parshat Man every day. People know about Parshat Man, you know about? A Rav in America called me today, Rabbi Fast from Lakewood, and he said, "Oh, you have a call with 30 people. How do you do it?" I said, "I say Parshat Man because it's guaranteed." The Gemara says if you say it, you're pronounced guaranteed. So I say it every day, and Baruch Hashem. So we keep going. But Rav Zweig told me, so one pshat is that you say the Parshat Man every day. That's one, and Shabbos also. But another pshat is that you just don't worry about your parnasa. In the midbar, they knew every morning was going to come down, right? And Chazal say that if you can't learn Torah if you have daigas, people who are worrying about paying back gemachim and running here and running there, this problem, that problem, just can't learn Torah. It has to be like Okleiman. It has to be like everything is settled, it's going to all come, everything is like that, right? And the lashon, the wording of the Gemara is Shmaitza boitzlusa kiyom and stuff. Like these pictures of like a spring day, like with the leaves, or the fall and the autumn and the leaves falling down and the breeze, and just sitting there under the tree. That's how you have to learn Torah, because it makes a different impact on a person when you're not Badaiga. When a person is Badaiga, that's what the Gemara is saying here. It really brings a person down. Now, the truth, it's not talking about Daiga, about the base of Migdash or Yer Shemayim, Yer Hashem. The Gemara says in other places, Yer Shemayim is something totally different. Daiga means worrying about things in life. So how do you deal with this, right? What's the title of today's shir? What was it? This is what? Oh, how to live in word, right? So that's the Gemara is going to say. So this is an amazing thing here, and this is like so apropos for the time that we're in now. Misha bought medaber lo dvarim tovim v'tamchunim yisamchenu hadvarim etzalei. Right? If somebody's bedaiga, yeah, you see somebody who really looks worried, nervous, anxious, having a hard life, yeah. Now, I'm sure it's not going to work for everybody. I gave a whole shiur last night about this, and someone said, but that did the opposite effect. Okay, there's always going to be exceptions, but in most cases, if a person's really nervous and you go to them and you calm them down and you say pleasant things to them, like the Gemara says, "Toivim v'tanchumim yisamchenu dvarim zleiv." You misamech someone's leiv, so then the daya goes away, right? And we know that. We know that if we feel like really down and someone comes and says like really nice things to us, yeah, it makes an impact. I told this story many times. My close friend, Rav Dov Brizak, I think he's in LA now. So he was walking down Rehov Givat Shol, where the 55 bus goes up, and he saw a guy look really worried. And he said hello to him, and the guy just like walked on. And like he was walking, and he said, there's a problem. He went, and the guy was on his way to commit suicide. And he spoke to him nicely, and he stopped, and he changed his, he Baruch Hashem, he didn't. So you could really save lives with that, number one, right? And to really care about other people. I think we said that before. Our Shadchan, Rav David Cohen, who Rav Shach said he's the Gadol Ador of the upcoming generation. He recently went to America and he got a Kabbalah's panel of 25,000 people singing, Yarmal Melech Tosef. Rav Shach said, David. So he told me once that Chazal say, how do you get saved from Chavlei Mashiach? It says, L'saslik b'Torah g'meos chasanim. Hisaskos. So he says, Hisaskos b'Torah means you learn Torah. Straight. Hisaskos means like straight without stopping. But how do you do Hisaskos g'meos chasanim? He said, just care about people. Right? You see somebody look down, just say something. Say something good to them, say something nice to people. Get in the habit of saying one good thing to people every single day, right? And this is a good Kabbalah, right? Kabbalah for the shir. Like we're not going to meet again till Elul. I'm going to South Africa tomorrow, and then it's going to be summer, right? So this is a really good Kabbalah. Every day, try to say one really positive statement to somebody. For example, Rabbi Todd Jacob, his son got engaged. He's a friend of mine, Eliel, and I went to the Vort. And he really appreciated that I came to the Vort. And I met him yesterday. He said, thank you so much. He said, it was my greatest pleasure to come to your Vort. It made him feel so good. How much? It didn't cost me any money, right? It was like 5 seconds. And like, make people feel good. And that's what the Quran is saying here, right? Shabo umidabelo dvarim tovim v'tanchumim. What's tanchumim? Right after, if for some reason we don't get a base of English by next Sunday, so we're going to have this Tisha B'Av, right? And then after Tisha B'Av is Shabbos Nachamu. What is Nachamu, right? So it's a very interesting thing that almost, except this year, it's a nidcha, but generally speaking, Shabbos Nachamu is exactly 7 days after Tisha B'Av. It's when we get up from the Shiva, right? Tisha B'Av is the beginning of the Shiva, and then we have 7 days, and then we have Shabbos Nachamu. Nachama is looking at things in a totally different way. And if you look what Chazal tell us about Tu B'Av, it's an incredible thing. Tu B'Av, it says, is the biggest yontif of the year. Yom Kippur and Tu B'Av, the Gemara says. There were not bigger Yom Tovim for Klal Yisrael, but other than Tu B'Av and Yom Kippur. They were the biggest holidays. So Yom Kippur, the Gemara says, I understand. Slik Kapara. Mechil Slik Kapara. But what did happen on Tu B'Av? Does anybody know what happened on Tu B'Av? Why it's the biggest yontif of the whole year? Anybody know? What? Shidduchim. It doesn't. Yeah, it could be Shidduchim, but right. But the Shidduchim actually was a result of the fact. Can I have some more water? I'm sorry. I was really thirsty today. So there were 5 things that happened on Tu B'Av, right? And one of them is that we were allowed to bury the Beit and Beitar. One of them is they stopped dying in the Midbar. One of them was that they took away the roadblocks to Yerushalayim, and then there were 2 decrees against marriage which were annulled on Tu B'Av, right? Those 5 things happened. So I once wanted to suggest like this: there were 5 things that happened on Tisha B'Av also, and one of them was they started dying, and here they stopped dying. One of them was that they begged or they were killed, and one of them they were allowed to be buried. There was a miracle happened, and none of the bodies rotted while to bury. The next 3 are more of a stretch, but I think it's still pshat. Yeah, it says that they rescinded 2 of the gezeras against marriage, and 2 of the base of Mikdash were destroyed. We know every time someone gets married, it's a Mikdash Ma'at. So that's a Nechama. You have the Mikdash Gadol is destroyed, but Mikdash Ma'at is increased. And against the plowing of Yerushalayim, they were allowed to come to Yerushalayim. The roadblocks are removed. Nechama, the Ramban says, Nechama is refocus, a different perspective on things, Like, this guy that Rabbi Brizak met in the street, I don't know what he told him. Maybe I should ask him to find out. I told you once that I was on the phone. I was going from Lakewood to Brooklyn to give a shiur, and a woman calls me up. She said, I'm on the roof. I'm about to jump. I'm like, oh my gosh. And she said, I got your number because I read your DD. It was a really good book. He said, but I've given up on life and I'm about to jump. I'm like, okay, let's take it really slowly. And I spoke to her for 2 hours, and Baruch Hashem, she decided not to jump, right? But how do you give a person nechama? Refocus, right? Take the same set of circumstances and try to give people a different outlook to it, And that's really such an incredible mitzvah if we could do that, And I recently had this chiddush. Rav Shimshon Pincus told me once. He said, it says, Gadol malbim shinaim mechalu chalav. It's bigger to show people the white of your teeth than give milk. He said milk keeps babies alive, right? But smiling is bigger than keeping babies alive, right? And how does it work? Because when you smile at someone, they think it's because of them, right? I think it's a tested phenomenon. If you go up the street and smile at someone, they think you're smiling because of them. You might even know the person, right? But they think you made them happy. That's the natural feeling. And that's like a really good feeling that I made someone else happy, right? So these are little things we could do. So that's my suggestion for the next month or so. Yeah, try once a day to do one thing to make somebody else happy. Yeah, and Rav David Cohen said that's called hisaskas v'gemilas chasadim, and that will save you from Chayv Mashiach. And we know it's not going to be simple. Mashiach is. We hope it's going to come with Rachamim, but it could be pretty difficult process. But whoever does that is assured that they're going to be spared, right? That they're going to be spared. And it's probably very simple. I'm just thinking of this now. because Hashem always acts measure for measure. And if you're all the time having mercy on other people, Hashem will have mercy on you. Yeah, Torah is simple because Torah protects. I know a story personally. I heard it from the person it happened to. He was driving a car with 4 Rosh Hashivas, and they drove off a cliff. They fell 30 feet. They just got out of the car and they walked away. Okay, the car was smashed up, but because Torah protects, Torah protects you. That's obvious. But what about Isaskus B'nai Sadim? Because if you're all the time thinking about other people, what you could do for them, how you can make them happy, HaKadosh Baruch Hu think about you and protect you and make you happy. Okay, so that's Daig B'Lev Isha Samchenu. And this is like such beautiful words. Okay, I just want to share with you now a beautiful idea from the Marashah, right?
What was the word
Yisachenu, right? So we're going to see it has multiple meanings. In this case, it means it brings you down. Like, right, it means like, yeah, yeah, to like look, it like what's the right word in English? It brings you, it gets you down, right? You feel down. It's a bummer. What a down. You're down. You feel down. Okay. There's a beautiful idea from the Marashah, right? I forget where this Gemara is. I once spoke about it during this time of year, but Yisachena, right? There's two. Oh, the Gemara in Yuma. It's Gemara in Yuma. The Gemara says 2 other ways to read Yisachena, right? One is Siach, and one is Heschadas, right? Siach means to talk, and Heschadas means to like. How do you say Heschadas? To like, not just distract. No, it's more than that. It's to distract, but it's like take your mind off things. That's distract, same thing. Okay. And the Marashah says the same thing. Because if you let somebody vent, yeah, let's say someone has some really things bothering them, and you just listen to them, that's going to help them. That's how you help them to be Masech Das, right? By just listening to them out. I remember Rabbi Ari Kapinski, when his daughter, before he was nifter, 2 years before, his daughter was nifter. He said, so many people are coming up to me and telling me their problems. Like, what do they want? I said, they just want you to listen. That's it. They don't want, right? The worst thing you could do is give people advice. That's like exactly what they don't want. They just want to, like, most of the time, generally speaking, right? They just want you to listen to them and hear them, right? Like I told many times, when I went to Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and I told my problems, he just said, Ani ma'od merachem alech, and he started crying. I felt better, So that's Daiga B'Lev Isha Sechen. One shot we said from the Gra, as you say kind, hard words to them, that gives, and Chanchuma, help them refocus. Another thing is just let them talk, right? And that's Hesach and Siach. Let them talk, and then that'll get it off their chest. They'll vent Hesach. I gave a shir, maybe it was 7-8 years ago, for this in the Vey, for these Lashon Hara Shem. Just be careful when they're venting, that you're careful about Hilchos Lashon Hara. And there's actually, the Chavetz Chaim has a suffix if venting is called the Twelis. Because, did I ever tell you about Starbucks? I told you about Starbucks. There's 7 conditions for Lashon Hara. And the acronym is Starbucks. Yeah? And you have to see it. That's S. Think about it. T. Accurate. A. Beneficial. B. R. R is reproof. B is beneficial. Use is utilize other ways. C is cause no more damage than based on wood. And Cas is keep 7 or keep silent, right? And I have a card which has it on next. It's in my book, Praying with Joy 3. And I could bring it next time I come in a month. It's a good thing to carry around, There was a girl once in Sharim, we gave it to her. And she came running up one day. She said, Rabbi Travis, I was about to speak Lashon Hara. I took up my card. And I realized I couldn't. I was like, oh, it was worth coming into this world for that. So, but that's it. So the Chavetz Chaim has a suffix if venting is beneficial or not. He has a suffix. And some say, look, I think it's a machlokas, it's a dispute amongst the poskim. Okay, but in generally speaking, if you don't say the name, there's no problem at all. And if you do, there's yesh al mi l'smach, Rav Yitzchak Berkowitz told me, venting means like once in a while. Like if all the time you're venting, then you should go to a psychologist. But that's it. So, but this is really very powerful, right? So we see 2 very powerful ways to really, really help people, right? which is so important during these 9 days because that's going to bring the base of Migdash, being Hisaskas Kavilos Chasadim, right? And that will bring the Shechina. We spoke about that so much before Purim about having a purifying your heart, right? Tov Lev Mishtatamid, right? The heart can't be good if it's filled up with daiga, right? If it's filled up with worry, just like if it's filled up with jealousy and hatred and other things. Daiga is the same thing. The heart has to be like cleaned out of everything in order to function properly. And you could help somebody clean out their heart by saying good things to them, giving them words of tanchumen, and also by letting them speak. And as it does. Okay. So now the Gra continues. Yisamchenu dvar mislev. V'zeu v'dvar tov yisamchenu. That's one shot in the pasuk. A second shot is davar tov yisamchenu ein tov el Torah. It means Torah. Ki kol anoisin olav ol Torah porkim mimenu hadaigas. Kamoshkas b'avros Rav Nassan, very famous. Avros Rav Nassan. The Rambam brings this halacha. Kol porkim mimenu ol Torah nosnav yihoria chori cherev v'hori znos v'hori shtos. Right. All of a person is not connected with learning Torah or life of Torah. All the bad thoughts come into your head. Makol no son of old Torah. He says at the bottom, it's the three types of Yitzhar, or Taivani, Kasani, and Gavani. Those are the three types. Right, Torah. The more connection a person has with Torah, so the more happy they'll be, because Torah is like a protection for the heart. Right? Torah stops all of these bad thoughts from coming into a person's heart. Yeah. So either way, you win, because Torah elevates a person, and it's very. I think I mentioned this here before. The Gemara says if somebody has a headache, it says study Torah. If your whole body aches, study Torah. Like if a headache, study Torah. That seems antithetical. Take a Tylenol, study Torah. But Torah lifts a person to a different realm. Sometimes if you're involved with Torah, you feel like it's like just a different life. You're just like in a different realm. And Reb Rebda once told me, he said he once went to visit Reb Chatzkel Levenstein, and he was sitting and learning. It took him an hour for him to realize he was there. He was just like in a totally different plane. And he said when Reb Chatzkel Levenstein said the word Olam Haba, he said Olam Haba, like he was right there. And that's the Shechina, and that's what we spoke about here at the beginning. That's what we don't have today. We don't have that close connection with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, it says, and there's two reasons for it, right? One reason is because we're smaller in this generation, and one reason is because there's so much tumah in the world today. I think it was where Shmuel Kamenetsky said, like with the invention of the internet, like the tumah increased like billions and billions of times, because like there was many good things that come out, and I can't complain because like I have so many shows. I can't complain, and in Torah time they say it's God's reason for the internet, but a lot of tumah came into the world. That's the reality. The reality is that there's more tumah in the world, and when there's more tumah in the world, the tumah banishes the Shechina. That's the reality. But the good news is you can bring it back. The more you have Torah in your life, and the more you're connected with Torah, and the more you make Torah part of your living, yeah. So the more Shechina you'll have in your life, and the more Simcha you'll have in your life, because that's what the Gra is saying here from Avos Rav Nassan, is because it's either or. Either you have kedusha or you have tumah. If you have kedusha, then you have Simcha. If you have tumah, then you have all of these other things which we don't really want. Okay, I'm going to skip for a second. Excuse me. I'm going to skip to pasuk Chaf Zayin. Pasuk Chaf Zayin. Very interesting pasuk here. Lo yachrach ramia tzedo, v'hon adam yakar choretz. Right. So what is this? Yachrach means to burn your to burn your trapping of birds. Somebody asked me, why are you going to South Africa? I said, I'm going to go lion hunting. What do you think? I'm actually going. I'm going to give 21 shirim over the next few days. So hopefully I should have siyata d'shmaya with that. But you have to burn the wings of your birds. We'll see that in a second, what that's all about. V'hodam yakar charetz. The Gra says like this. He brings a Gemara, and it's a Gemara 118 in Erevin. Yeah, it says if you trap birds, if you don't burn their wings, then you lost them because they'll just fly away, right? And he says, "Kol ma'atzad, enarak remia." You won't be left with anything. Ki baruach yivrach ben biyano. They'll just fly away. B'chein b'teira im lomed ve'ena chozer tamid b'chdei sheyisker tamid kol ma'ashalomed eno ela b'remia. It's called remia. The Gra is very big on this. Ki lo yisher biyo mu'uma. This is very good. We're at the end of a parak, yeah, and it might be an idea. Let's see, there's another month we learn. You could do one pasuk a day, and then it would be a good review of what we learned. The Gra is very big on review, right? And in fact, if you wanted to get into yeshiva, he would ask you to read a certain passage, and they would ask you to read it again and again and again and again, like 100 times. And if the person felt the same excitement after 100 times, he was accepted. Wasn't too many people. But that's it. Because the more you internalize Torah, Reb Revli used to say, like, there's a lot of people the Torah like is in their mind, but it doesn't enter their blood. Someone said about Shach, if you cut open his veins, like Torah will come out of it. So it has to become part of your being, right? And you get that by Chazara, but not just Chazara. You have to after a shir, there's two types of people who go to a shir. One person will go to the shir and hear nice ideas and they'll come out and they're very nice, right? But one person will come out and be changed, make a small change in life. What's the difference? The difference is that one person thought about the ideas and they put their own bina, like we said once. There's Shivim Panim L'Torah, 70 pages of Torah, and there's 600,000 pages of Torah. Every neshama has a slightly different understanding of that, and that's called bina. And women have bina yisera, right? They have the ability to have even more, to break things down and get even a more deeper understanding of it, even than men. If you don't do that, it doesn't become part of you, because everyone has their own perspective on things. And if I say something or I read something and you just listen to it, it's not going to go in. The way it goes in is you have to process it through yourself, and then that's a Kinyan Torah. And that's what review does. You go over it, especially the next day or the next week or the next month, or you finish a whole section. It's a really good time to go over it. Yeah. And then you see it again and say, oh, but how does that apply to me? Everyone's different. Everyone has different nisyonos. Everyone has different challenges. Everyone has a different way of thinking. And that's really how that's called Kinyan Torah, right? And that's what the Gra is saying. You have to go over it all the time, and that's like burning the wings of the birds. Otherwise, remia. I once spoke to a certain Avreich, and he said, I've been in Kol 15 years. I remember one thing I learned. I said, that's so sad, Okay, look, and, okay, so he's studying Torah Lishma. But if you learn something and you know it, it's just so much more practical, for your life, that it makes so much more of an impact. Right? Okay. Okay, so now, V'hon Adam Yakar Charetz, Abal Hahon Shalom, the wealth of a person, Kolomer, Yesh Hon Rav, who Yakar V'charetz, that's great to have a lot of wealth. We'll see it's in Torah. Ki Yesh Davar Sheyakam Od. Ach Ein Charef Limkar, right? You can have something very expensive, but it's hard to sell it. Certain items, like I would buy someone's house in the 5 towns, and he said he just sold a bottle of whiskey for $25,000. Personally, I wouldn't buy it. One cup, $1,000, for a shot glass. Okay, and he told me if he waited 3 years, he could sell it for $35,000. But he has a lot of bottles, so he wasn't worried about it. Okay, so that's the thing. But it's probably not so easy to sell that. I don't know anybody here would purchase it, for the next bar mitzvah. Yeah, this bottle of whiskey is $25,000. Okay. I'd be afraid to sneeze around it. So that's hard to sell, right? And you probably don't have too many buyers. V'yesh davar sheyesh alav kopes, there's a lot of buyers of any yakar. It's very cheap. It's not something valuable, right? Aval zeh sheyesh b'yado hon b'yado yakar v'charetz. A person who has something very valuable with a lot of buyers, so that's something really good, Okay, va'inyan, so yakar is Torah, v'charetz is mitzvahs. right? Kamosh kasavti lamala. Tov pri v'choretz. Misheyesh biyado hon shuatera, right? Who shechos or tamid, because he or she reviewed what they've studied and they know it, right? Oh, he says v'sod hon is chamesh teras. That's the 5, and vav is the shisha sidri mishnah, and nun is the nun shari bina. So hon, hey vav nun, 5 books of Torah, 6 books of Mishnah, and 50 gates of bina. V'husod naran, which is nefesh ruach and neshama, kamosh ksavti lamala, seder netzach v'hod. Okay, misheyesh biyado kol zos yakar v'charetz. Right. If you have Torah and mitzvahs, that's the best wealth that a person can have. When we get to olam haba, like there's some people get buried in their sports cars or whatever. Just they don't value sports cars in olam haba. I once was talking to a certain friend of mine. We went outside and he had a sports car for $200,000. I said, "That's my toy." Nice guy. He said, "But it's my toy, But okay, he knows it won't. You can't drive into Olam Haba with I don't know what whatever cars that people drive and say. But so that's it. Torah mitzvahs. That is the best schora that you could have. Okay. So it's a little bit late. I just want to finish the parak. There's 2 small psukim, and they're both basically saying the same thing. So let's do that quickly. It's chaf zvav and chaf ches. Yesem areu tzadik v'derech rishoyim titayim. Right? Says the Gra, derech tzadikim lahaster maseim l'snei lechem. A tzaddik goes with sneas. He doesn't tell anyone how great he is and all the great things that he's doing. Ach mi shirotz lio tzadik b'lev darkei Shem humargo mitzadik chavero tedrachav lechzbem. You have to be around other tzaddikim. That's really the way you pick it up. What's a tzaddik? When we lashon v'yoser etzeretz kanan, like to spy the land. You have to spy out tzaddikim, and that's why I have a very big privilege of being yelled at by every gadol in Klal Yisrael, because sometimes I got a little bit too obnoxious. But more or less, by analyzing tzaddikim and seeing how they function, that's the way you learn. V'derech rishoyim titoyim, aval rishoyim darkam b'sgalia, right? The rishoyim have no problem letting people know everything they're all about, right? V'zeh shizgalia v'zeh titoyim, it's something really bad. Ki echad lomed es atzmo michavero, right? The Rishayim learn from each other like new tricks how to be Russia. Pasuk Chav Ches is basically saying the same thing. Bi'ark tzedakah chaim ki derech tzadikim akol beskasi, it's all covered up. Ubefrat tzedakah sarich litain behester. So Levi's, tzedakah is a bigger mitzvah if you give it secretly, quietly. Ki yedua. L'chein amar b'ark tzedik chaim, right? Kamoshu mechai esa ani. Just like a person gives life to the ani, so he gets life himself. It's mina keneged mida. Ukuvda de Binyamin at Tzaddik. The Gemara brings a story there where he was mechai a certain family and he got extra life. V'derech nesina elamavis, right? Sorry, nisyav elamavis. Afilu mi shaholich darko b'toch darko yesh nesiva nesiv shala v'hainu shal tzedakah ba'oso derech as lo yeh mavis machmas oso tzedakah. A person who travels on the path of tzedakah, so he'll be saved from a lot of things, from difficulties and from death, and it's really a very powerful thing. Okay, again, we spoke about a lot of points tonight. We spoke about how the world is deceptive, especially today. We don't see the Shekhinah, and it's very deceiving. We think things are fine, and we're missing a lot. We said, if you can, try to pick one thing during these 9 days that you feel like you're really missing, right? I took off my tie, something in your life to feel like you're missing something. And then that will jolt our minds and really realize that we're missing the Beis Mikdash. All the things we do is Zeich HaMikdash. We don't paint the whole house. We don't a woman doesn't wear all the jewelry. You're not supposed to serve all the portions on the table. They had a set amount of portions. All the things have to do with not having complete joy in this world. And right, okay. And we said in Pasuk Kafeh, we said about Daig V'levi Ish Yisachena. We said that if you say warm, positive things to people, that makes them happy. And who knows, which people are really depressed today and really contemplating suicide. You could be very well saving lives by doing that. That was one thing. We said a small Kabbalah potentially. to try once a day to say one really positive thing to someone. And if you didn't do one day, so do the next day, or once a week, whatever you could do is really, really good. Yeah. And you get in the habit of it. And then, like Rav David Cohen said, start like looking for opportunities to say good things to people. And like eventually it becomes like really makes you feel good. It's a really wonderful thing. And also listening to people. We said Yisachena, on one hand, it means like Yisachena, it means like a person, it brings a person down. We said also Yisachena means Hesachadas, and by talking, Sicha and Hesachadas, by just listening to people, right, vent, then they feel much better. And we said Torah, it's very important to go over it. We suggested even that if you want to go over, whoever wants to take one of this farm home for next month, and as long as you bring it back, I think it's right. And you can go over these psukim if you wish, right? Someone told me why there's no Mishlei in English, because nobody wrote it. And I would, but I don't have enough time to do it. And also, I'm not sure if it would make the same impact in English as in Hebrew. But it's really good to review. And the more you review, the more it becomes part of you. And it gets in. And we said a very important point is that in order to become part of you, you have to think about it and think about how it applies to your life, like in your own way of thinking and your own understanding, right? That's Bina. And then we just said we had two psukim about how tzaddikim go with sneas and iskasia, and Rishoyim they go everything with miskala. I once asked Rav Safrani, I said, how do you know if somebody's the real thing? He said if they go with sneas. Sneas. And sneas is not just a person's clothing, but it's their whole attitude and their presentation of themselves, and are they ostentatious or not. Tzaddikim, they don't like to take credit. They don't like, I remember I was when Art School put out a book of some stories with Gedolim, so I had to get permission from them. They shouldn't be a court. They shouldn't sue Art School. So I went to Rav Asher Eli, and I asked him permission. He said, no. I said, what do you mean? He said, no story about me is true. Every single story that's told about me is completely false. I said, but I experienced it. It doesn't matter. They're all false, And it was like back and forth for 20 minutes. And finally I said, but Rebbe, I said, well, it'd be a big chesed. Oh, chesed. He couldn't argue with chesed. But just like such an antithesis of like kavod and, self-centeredness, Rav Asher Eli. But in any event, we'll close with that. The more you can say positive, good things to people and fill people's hearts with good feelings and good thoughts, this is really what we're supposed to be doing now. The reason we don't have a base of English is because we have Sinas Chinam. Sinas Chinam doesn't mean you hate somebody's guts. That's not Sinas Chinam. That's like much worse than that, right? Sinas Chinam means like you feel a little bit upset with people because whatever, they didn't do something or they did do something or this. Even the smallest feeling of uncomfortability with somebody is Sinas Chinam. If a person who's always looking to say good things to everybody, then your life just changes and you clear your heart out, and that allows the Shekhinah to sit there and to have the base of English. I know a couple of years ago I was really upset with somebody, very, very, very upset with someone. It was like for a whole year, it just like threw me off. And then I just realized it's just the way this person is. They don't mean anything bad. That's just like the way they talk. I took it a certain way. It's just the more we can understand that each person is different and enter their reality and just try to, and like we said from the Gra and Yud Aleph Yud Tes, nothing bad ever. People don't do anything bad. Everything the Gra says is Gzar min Hashamayim, right? And it would have happened anyway, he says, right? Shahar be'shluchim l'makom, v'im lo yaseh, ye'al di'acher, right? So it's going to happen anyway. There's absolutely no point ever to be upset with anybody. It's a tall order, I understand, but the things we spoke about, saying good things to people, the more you get accustomed to saying good things to people, you look at people in a positive light and see them in positive light, and the Shekhinah will just fill up your heart. Just like such a better way to live your life. Just so much more pleasant. So everyone should have a good summer, and we should have Siyata D'Shmaya. We should be Zochet the Beis Hamikdash. And of course, we have to thank Nisko Toy for hosting this year. Thank you so much and giving so much food. And everyone should have a lot of bracha and tzlacha and Siyata D'Shmaya. This will be uploaded. Yeah, it'll go on 20 times.